As soon as it happens. What up with it? Let me get this popping. Got another good show for y'all. All right, we got the manufactured history by Due Diligence. Do you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we ain't
Let's
gonna
go.
rush into it, but we live. We want to let some of the people fall in. Let me know if you want me to play a tune or not, because I was like, I ain't gonna mess up your presentation like that, but you definitely want to let some people roll in. So let me ask you a few questions.
Man.
If you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. What spawned you to make this presentation? What inspired you to make this presentation?
Well, man, I just believe that history is framed a certain way from a certain people's perspective. And I tend to see it a different way. And we all know that theories are, the organization of scientific facts. So we got the facts, we can frame them how we want to also. So it's just a matter of me just seeing it from our perspective and framing it from our perspective and instead of letting other people frame it for them. And we haven't given that perspective as a whole before. We just always just like to point stuff out and be like, hey, they messed this up, they messed this up. Well, let's put it all together and see what the new perspective is. And I just wanted to put it that way and just bring it to the people and see what the people think.
Word up, they rolling in the building fast. They coming in.
Peace.
Make sure y'all get y'all arrows up. Let's put let's like the video, and you can let me know when you ready to get started. It ain't no thing, bro.
I mean, you can play one of them slaps if you want. Then after that slap goes, we'll just go in.
Okay, but since you hearing it from the back chat, you might not hear the song, but if you listen on the YouTube, you'll be able to know. And that's what I will do. I'm going to play.
Just let me know when it's ready to go. I'm gonna go in.
It's all good. And I'm gonna go and play that crazy bro for y'all one time. We got Due Diligence. Make sure y'all like the video when we coming in so we can get this presentation popping. Let's go. No, they have. Bring that back. Yeah, and I'ma work cause I ain't going out lazy, bruh. Thought he was conscious, but the homie just played me, bruh. The house of consciousness is going out crazy, bruh. They crazy, bruh. Alright, it's getting kinda dirty in these YouTube streets. The Amin Ra squad, God thinking you dudes weak. Islam or Judaism, where you learn what you dudes teach. The West African rapper slapping with that voodoo speech. All that sub-Saharan terror about a kufu feet. I'm like Norma, the agricultural farmer that grew you wheat for the storehouses. We feed the Hebrews and lead the people when we defeat the feeble. They wanna know polite rip me off, but Sonetta paid me my money though. That mean he 100. And I'ma work cause I ain't going out lazy, bruh. Thought he was conscious, but the homie just played me, bruh. The house of consciousness is going out crazy, bruh. They crazy, bruh. Nubian with the Jews, I rock the pinky. I think Jesus got to save me. A doctor save me, a Dr. Inky. I cop the copper jewels on blue and red. I'm not the chakra doctor, y'all claim woke. But you in bed, you won't pop a chopper, you Grandmaster J. You just talking. Punks turn the other cheek and you will walk away. Y'all gon' have to pardon my Moorish. That's to Harker Bay. I'm on that black African power on my darkest day. And that's my brother Ankh stomping them other punks. We brought them gators to Italy, you loving the Moors. And now I'm teaching from my shrine like brother Jabari. Scope in the savannah cause I'm on another safari. Tasha K showed us Frank record. Young Pharaoh just losing his mind and y'all can't help him. I know one thing, you're a fool if you're still out here donating to Umar school. That shit through. And I'ma work cause I ain't going out lazy, bruh. Thought he was conscious, but the homie just played me, bruh. The house of consciousness is going out crazy, bruh. They crazy, bruh. Look. You showing your hidden colors like don't hit that like button. A bunch of pseudo information I don't think I need. Probably lying on the text, ask Divine or Zion Lax. Just get that microphone ready. With Metal Netta, I'm Stone Jetty, a Ujahu, a Saw Imhotep. Y'all probably timid still on them Bobby Hemmett teachings. I'm in Gozy with the DNA. Cat's corny and it's killing me too. You talk that black shit, but you look Arab like Gorilla Hebrew. You need therapy, they telling me just chillin', be cool. I'm a magi orchard, you a sad guy talking.
That's right.
And I'm a work 'cause I ain't going out lazy, bro. Thought he was conscious, but the homie just played me, bro. The house of consciousness is going out.
We got
crazy,
that fire
bro.
coming from due
They
diligence.
crazy, bro.
That's right. All right, let me see. That was cool. That was cool. Do you there? Whenever
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm boosting your mic. It's on you. I'm muting out. You probably can hear me, but YouTube won't hear me, so we can communicate. All right, it's on you. Peace.
All right, bet. Well, welcome. So today we just going to talk about worldviews, and it's my hypothesis that a worldview is a worldview, and we have accepted another people's worldview, right? And we're supposed to be looking at things objectively, right? And I am proposing that science is not as objective as we think it is. So we're just going to go through history and examine some of the main founders of philosophy, metaphysics, science. The founding fathers of these things are so-called founding fathers who the Western world's told you who are at the forefront of science and just leading the way and created this worldview that we know of today. So if you would just follow me, it's gonna be some readership and it may be a little redundant in places, but it's because I'm trying to show a common theme. I want you guys to pay attention to the theme that's come about whenever I go through these different people. So we just gonna go through history and analyze these people and their contributions to history and look at where it got us today. All right, here we go. Let me get that first slide, Smash. So the creation of a worldview, starting with Plato and Aristotle, because here we have one of the first comprehensive writings on the foundational principles of a society. We not only have the first attempts of a systematic biology and metaphysics, but we also have the thought and philosophy behind. This is how cosmology turns into biology, right? If you know how science progressed, it was philosophy first, right? And then it kind of merged into a science. So, natural philosophy was first. People was just philosophizing, just, trying to come up with ideas. And then they had to kind of just merge into a science. So, so this is how cosmology is the way people see how the universe, believe how the universe operates, right? So this is how you have cosmology turns into biology, somewhat of a proto-science. To better understand how this works, let's take a look at Aristotle and Plato's contribution to philosophy, metaphysics, and examine how it still affects us today. Slide 2. The Platonic worldview and Aristotle. This is 300 BC. Starting with Plato and Aristotle, here's where you can see the essence foundation of Western world principles. I argue that it is just a remix of earlier Egyptian culture. It failed by the European. And instead of reinventing the wheel, it was easier to use what was already there to work for millennia and slap a new face. They can't. I got them numbers, so I don't know, but right now I'm on the second slide. Yeah, yeah. All right. This is how cosmology turns into biology. Philosophy turns into science. If you're not aware, in the beginning, 300 BC times, guys was just philosophizing, really just trying to come up with different ways on how the world. Because you have to remember, science ain't exist. Like we had to create that. So what were guys doing before science? They was philosophizing, really just kicking a bobo, trying to chop it up, trying to figure out how the world works, right? And that turned into worldviews. It turned into a philosophy. It turns into a cosmogony, right? How the world works, how a culture believes that the universe works, right? Proto science, right? To better understand how this work, Aristotle and Plato contribution to philosophy, metaphysics, science, and examine how it affects us today. Let me get slide 3. So starting with Plato and Aristotle, here is where you can see the essence and the foundation of the Western world principles. I argue that it is just a remix of earlier Egyptian culture, and when Egypt fell, their culture was hijacked by the New World power, the European. And instead of reinventing the wheel, it was just easier to use what was already there and slap a new face on it, use what was already proven for millennia. The ancient, slide 4, Smash. The ancient Egyptians seen themselves as the center of the world and were proud of their heritage, seeing themselves as black and black as divine. They thought of themselves as the chosen people of the creator and generally seeing their ethnic group in general, they thought of themselves as the chosen people of the creator and generally seeing ethnic groups as inferior to themselves. If this sounds familiar, then you can probably see where I'm going with this. The Egyptian paradigm is the archetype of modern Western paradigm. From Greek mythology to Judaism, Christianity, all stem from Egyptian thought. Numerous scholars, including Greeks, telling you where they got their ideas from. It is literally right next door to Egypt. So you know they got their ideas from Egypt. They was right there together. Once you assume power and take control of territory and the people, the smart thing to do is to merge the two ideologies, assuming that you have one or simply manufacture one from the rich culture that already existed. So the hypothesis is the Greeks, using Plato and Aristotle, manufactured Greek idealism from traditions of Jewish Christianity and Egyptian principles. That is the hypothesis, right? We're going to be working up towards that. We starting at 300 BC, so just walk with me. Slide 5, Smash. What up? Bet. And so we finna deal with Platonic thought. Go ahead, slide 6. Let's take a look at Plato's philosophy. Plato's theories of forms. Are you guys familiar with Plato's theory of forms? Let me know if this sounds familiar to you guys. Also known as ideas or essences, are fundamental concepts in Plato's philosophy represent the ultimate reality underlying the physical world. According to Plato, the physical world is merely a reflection or an imperfect copy of the true reality, right? And you also have this idea in Egyptian thought too. You also have this view in the biblical world too, which exists in the form. Plato posited forms are abstract, immutable, and transcendent entities that exist independently of the physical world. Unlike physical objects, which are subject to change and imperfection, forms are perfect and eternal. They serve as archetypes or blueprints for the objects and qualities we encounter in the physical world. Go ahead and go to slide 18, Smash. Skip all the way to 18. So here we have Plato's theories of forms where he describes a metaphysical world with entities, essences, and abstractions that are the archetypes for the material world, the non-physical to the physical, right? Does that sound familiar to you guys? And this is a parallel to the biblical spiritual world that has no physical beings, which are like angels and God, the Holy Ghost, who is perfect, God, and angels who are eternal. They are the archetype for human since the image of God and God's idea of love, good. That is the same principle. Those things are the same in principle, right? So where is Plato getting this from? Is Plato making this stuff up? Is he pulling from uh, the Jews' religion at this time, or is he pulling from the Egyptian thought at this time, or is he making it up himself? See, Plato is credited with these ideas, but it is my contention that he's pulling from other places, and I would say he's pulling from Egypt and the Bible, which is not the Bible at this time, which is probably more akin to Judaism, right? Excuse me. Plato argued that true knowledge comes from apprehending the forms through rational insight rather than sensory perceptions. And that's also in the Bible. Proverbs 2:6, true good knowledge comes from God as gifted to those who have understanding. That's the same principle. So let me repeat what Plato said. Plato argued that true knowledge comes from apprehending the forms, which is the spiritual world, through rational insight rather than sensory perception. Proverbs 2:6, true knowledge comes from God to those who have understanding. All right. Plato, he believed the soul prior to birth had knowledge of forms but forgot them upon entering the physical world. Through philosophical inquiry and dialect, individuals can recollect this innate knowledge and attain a deeper understanding of reality. That part right there is like reincarnation, but different story. But you know, the Bible kind of speaks to reincarnations, but Christians don't accept it as such. But anytime you die and come back to life, that's reincarnation. But we ain't gonna go down that road. All right. So let's go to slide 19, and let's expound more on this hierarchy of forms, right? Plato's theory of forms, right? So now we're going to talk about the hierarchy of forms, which is in Plato's theory of forms. Plato conceived a hierarchical structure within the realm of forms, from the form of the good occupying the highest position. The form of good is the source of all other forms and provides the ultimate standard of truth, beauty, and morality. Not familiar. Illuminates the other forms, much illuminates the physical, enabling beings to their highest potential. Let me give you the parallel to that. Daniel 7:27 states that the kingdoms under heaven will be given the saints, the people of the Most High, and that all will worship and obey Him. So here's this in the form world, the spiritual world, in his theories of forms. You got this non-physical world called forms, which is a hierarchy. So, and then I'm gonna show you some more parallels in the Bible. This is Romans 13. Let every person be subject and authorities, for the authority is set from God, and those that exist being instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists authorities resists God, resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. What is that saying? It's saying that the highest authority is God. God gave his authority to the kings and queens on earth, and if you disobeying them, you disobeying God. So here's this hierarchical structure that the Bible is talking about, and Plato is saying essentially the same thing. So I'm gonna give another example. Psalms 8:4-8. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you care for him? Yet you have made him little Lord, the heavenly, and crowned him with your glory and honor. You have given him dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep, oxen, and all also other beasts of the field, the birds of the heaven, the fish of the sea, whatever pass along of the sea. God, angel, man, animal. Here is this hierarchy, right? Overall, Platonic forms represent Plato's physical framework for the nature of reality and the relationship between the physical world and the eternal realm of forms. They are central to his philosophy and have a profound influence on subsequent Western thought and set the foundation for a hierarchical social structure. Slide 20, right? And we finna start cooking in a minute. Stay with me. I know it's a little readership, but it's finna start in a little bit. We finna go Plato, then gonna go to Aristotle, check out his theory, and then we gonna come to modern science and see how they pick up on these guys' theories and build on this, and you're gonna see what we have today in modern science, and you tell me if it's objective or not, right? So let's go to Plato's Republic, and let's go to Plato's Republic, slide 20, right? And this is about Plato's Republic. Paper on the Republic, right? He talks about the institution of the state and how he thinks the state should be set up. So Plato is credited with creating the first city state, right? The idea of the city state, really. So they give all that credit to Plato. So Plato uses the hierarchical social structure as a means to establish harmony and order within an ideal state. Each class is assigned specific roles, duties based on their abilities and natures. So let's say that again. Plato has used the hierarchical social structure as a means to establish harmony within the ideal state. Each class is assigned specific roles and duties based on their abilities and natures. So that right there is telling you he believed that people have a specific nature and their role in society is based on their innate nature. Does that sound familiar? It will. It will. With the aim of promoting the common good and maintaining social stability, philosopher kings who possesses wisdom and virtue are entrusted state, while the war.
I had to
What
come on YouTube real quick because it's kind of breaking up a little bit. It's kind of breaking up a little bit right now. Just giving you a break. Maybe we could try to get your mic because it's kind of breaking up. People were saying, "What's up?"
all right.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Hey,
Just try again. Go ahead.
no, you good. All right. So we in Plato's Republic, and this is where Plato is given credit for creating the city state. So and everything is kind of supposed to be modeled after that. So let's talk about how Plato's city is supposed to be structured, right? So they set the philosophical or the metaphysical groundwork has been laid, right? You got the non-physical coming into the physical, right? And then you have the hierarchy of the non-physical that's reflected in the physical world, right? So now let's check out the physical world, right, and how he wants to set it up. Plato uses the hierarchical social structure as a means to establish harmony and order within the ideal state. Each class is assigned specific roles and duties based on their abilities and natures, right? So they giving people roles based on their abilities and natures, right? He's saying people have innate natures and they being assigned specific roles according to that. That should sound familiar to you, but if it doesn't right now, it will here in a minute. Walk with me. With the aim of promoting the common good and maintaining social stability, the philosopher kings who possesses wisdom and virtue are entrusted with governing the state, while the warrior class ensues its defense and protection, and the producers fulfill the material needs of society. You see, so you got the philosopher kings at the top. So if you remember back in the day, all the kings and queens, they was all these super smart people. The lower class were peasants, didn't know nothing. They was the producers, and then the kings had the lords, all that type of stuff. That's where that idea comes from, at least from the idea from the Greek perspective. But I also think that archetype was in Egypt, and I know it is, and we'll elaborate on that another time. But this is how he's trying to set up his city state, and you can see it today, and you can see it back in the day, right? So there is also a dualism to Plato's idealism. um, Plato's idealism introduces a dualistic view of reality, distinguishing between the intelligible realm of forms and the sensible realm of appearances. The intelligible realm where the forms reside is accessible to intellect through rational thought and dialect. In contrast, the sensible realm is characterized by impermanence, change, and deception as perceived through the senses, the physical and the metaphysical. Spiritual and physical, material and immaterial, the dual aspect of nature. Nature is the physical world, and nature as the essence and characteristics or traits of something. So nature has a dual aspect of it, right? You have nature as in the physical world, but then you also have nature as in something's nature, the characteristics or the traits of something. So when we're talking about science, right, and we say science is the observation of nature, right? But you also have to include the things that you can't see, the traits of something. Whenever you observing like the observations of particles that you can't see, that's still part of science. Science is just not empirical, the things that you can see, but it's also the things that you can't. So you have to keep that in mind also. So now, slide 21. Now let's look at Aristotle. Aristotle is a student of Plato. Let's see what he does, right? So Aristotle comes in right after Plato. He's Plato's student, and Aristotle comes in with Aristotle's natural slavery. Have you guys ever heard of Aristotle's natural slavery? Well, if you haven't, you're about to hear about it today. Aristotle presented his theory of natural slavery primarily in his work Politics. So if you want to check out Aristotle's natural slavery, look in his books Politics. He argued that some people are naturally suited to be slaves. Have you heard that before? Others are naturally suited to be masters, and that the distinction between slaves and free people lies in their rational an irrational capacity, and free people lies in their irrational capacity. He claimed that natural slaves lacked the rational foresight necessary to govern. He suggested that master-slave relationship is mutually beneficial. He suggested that the master-slave relationship is mutually beneficial. The master benefits from the labor and the service of the slave, while the slave benefits from the master's rational direction and provision of necessities, right? Let's contrast this to American slavery. Did y'all not know it was the same thing? Give me slide 22, Smash. So how is that any different? How is that any different from American slavery? You guys have heard that before. But right now we in 300 BC, and we think that this form of slavery started in the 1400s, up in that area, 1700s, but this is the philosophy right there. This is 300 BC. And he said people are born to be slaves. They are inherently not even capable of doing nothing else but being slaves, saying that God mandated it pretty much, because if they believe in this spiritual world, this world of forms, right? And then you are being born and you are inherently not capable of even rational insight that you're born to be a slave. He's saying that you just are what you are. And who are they going to put that on? So this is some of the philosophy that Aristotle brings into existence, and people embody that. Slavery in America was justified through the belief that Africans and their descendants were inherently inferior and not fully human. This belief was used to argue that they were naturally suited for slavery. It was often claimed that their subjugation was benefited both for them and the economic interests of the slaveholders. We know that, but this is back in 300 BC. But they don't tell you this, but Plato and Aristotle is heralded to be the fathers of the Western world philosophy and biology. We're going to get to that, right? Natural hierarchy. Aristotle believed in a natural hierarchy where everything has its place and function. Just as there are rulers and subjects in nature, he posited that human society also has a natural order where some are meant to rule and others to be ruled. People often talk about Aristotle's work, The Great Chain of Being, where he shows the natural order coming from the spiritual to the physical. There's a common misconception of Aristotle's work, The Great Chain of Being. The problem is it doesn't exist. Aristotle's concept of the great chain of being is not explicitly outlined in a single work, but rather scattered throughout his writings, particularly in his work Metaphysics and his work On the Soul. In these texts, Aristotle discusses his ideas about the hierarchical structure of nature, the beings arranged in a greater scale from lowest to highest, reflecting their degree of perfection and complexity. Aristotle's idea about the hierarchical organization of nature provided the philosophical framework for later thinkers to expand upon and interpret. That is the premise. So they are setting this up. You are going to see more and more of this. They setting up the field, right? They setting up the playing field. They putting the pieces in place. They coming with the philosophy, right? He believed that a well-ordered society required clear roles and hierarchies, which he thought were evident in nature and necessary to form social harmony. The same way society is set up today during the Middle Ages, especially in Christian West, scholars like Thomas Aquinas synthesized Aristotle's philosophy with Christian theology, right? And they kind of merged those two. They interpreted Aristotle's hierarchy view of nature in a way that aligned with Christian cosmology and theology, leading to the development of the concept known as the Great Chain of Being. This concept depicted the universe as a hierarchical structure with God at the top, followed by angels, humans, animals, plants, and innate objects, each occupying a specific place in the cosmic order based on their degree of perfection and complexity. This framework was used to explain various aspects of the natural world, human society, and the relationship between God and creation. So while Aristotle himself did not explicitly formulate the concept of the great chain of being, it is understood in later periods his ideas provided the philosophical foundation upon which later scholars built this concept and attributed to him. Right? So you can see it building. The student is building on his master's work. Plato came, he gave the metaphysical to the physical. Now Aristotle is coming and saying, putting people in their place. You know what I'm saying? So now we're finna look at philosophy. Oh, go to slide 23 and just let the people see, and then go straight to slide 24, right? So this is where philosophy meets biology to theology. Aristotle is considered the father of biology and zoology, with his classifications with the two animal kingdoms, animal and plantae. And his theory of biology is known as Aristotle's biology, which describes metabolism, temperature regulation, and embryogenesis. Go to slide 25. Let the people check that out. And then you can go ahead and go to 26 and then go to 27. So now the philosophy, they trying to bring it into reality, right? You seen the metaphysical framework. You've seen the philosophical framework. You've seen the philosophical framework. And now they trying to bring it into the natural world. They setting this up. This shit had to come from somewhere. Excuse my language. It had to come from somewhere. Where does it come from as far as the Western world is concerned? But like I said, my hypothesis is that they got it from a previous empire that already existed, a previous worldview, and they put their own spin on it. Where is this philosophy coming from?
That's
right.
right.
So now we've gone from 300 BC and we coming to 300, 400 BC, and now the church is getting involved, right? The church has always been involved, but they're getting heavy involved. And then you have people like Augustine, 300 to 430 AD. Excuse me, we in the AD era right now. So we went from the 300 BC, and now we in 300 AD, right? And you have a church father named Augustine, right? And here is his quote: "We must show our scriptures not to be in conflict with whatever our critics can demonstrate about the natural world of things from reliable sources." Let me say that again. We must not show our scriptures to be in conflict with whatever our critics can demonstrate about the nature of things from reliable sources. Let me say that again. We must not show our scriptures. We must show our scriptures not to be in conflict with whatever our critics can demonstrate about the nature of things from reliable sources. Now, what does that say? This is Augustine, Saint Augustine to be exact. He's saying that we must show our scriptures not to be in conflict with what our critics can show. Who is the church's critics? It's people in science. So this is one of the church fathers saying that, if the people get hip, we can pretty much, conform our scriptures to it. So these people are not above.
Hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
Straight up. So you got to understand that the church knows, you know what I'm saying? If they get exposed, they're not above conforming to what's going on, but it took a long time. This is one of the first Christian fathers, or one of the first uh, of the Catholic Church to come out and be like, hey, they waking up, so let's just conform to it. And it took a long time for them to start, because remember, if you going against the church with science, they was hanging you, burning at a stake. But this is one of the guys that kind of got smart with it. Let's go to slide 28. And then you can just go ahead and put that up for a minute, and then we go to slide 29, right? And then we can go to slide 30. Now we about to start cooking. Now it's going to start speeding up a little bit. And if you walk with me all this time, I appreciate it. But now we about to get busy. Because now we in the modern time when we finna start talking about some real science, some real so-called science, some real pseudo-science, some real race science, the real reality of what it is today, right? So let's check it out. So now we in the modern science time. We in 1684 with Francis Bernays. I probably said that wrong as a Frenchman, but we in 1684. He published New Division of Earth by different species or races which inhabit it, right? This is 1684. They say he was the first to classify races, but the term race didn't exist yet. So the title of the paper is loosely translated as races, because when you look at his work, the qualifications of the classifications are the same as races we know it today. He distinguished 5 human types. While it's the criteria for classifying peoples of his work, according to physical traits, were rather loose, The little essay came to life in the second part, devoted to describing female beauty, right? And in the different races he observed. He especially praised the black African woman he has seen he has seen naked in the slave market, although he noted they were 3 times more expensive than the others. So in 1684, we got this guy, right? And he the one that made the classification amongst humans in 1684, right? So now they classifying humans. It was just class, right? It was kind of class. And then they said, you know, you was just inherently, no matter what color you was, you could be a slave. Because, you know, back in the day, it wasn't based off color. They was just slaving peasants. You know what I'm saying? Slaving whoever they could slave. So now this dude is starting to put humans in different classification systems. And he was the first one in 1684 who had a five human classification system first. Slide 31. And then we can go to slide 32, the Carl Leon. So we was in the 1684, and then we come right to 1700. Was Carl Leonidas. He was a Swedish botanist, zoologist, taxonomist, and a physician who formalized binomial nomenclature. What that means is he formalized the language for biology, right? So now they got to get their language together because they just using regular language of the day, which is basically folk language, folk nomenclature. You know what I'm saying? Because they trying to classify things. If you want to classify things, you got to have a scientific language. So from the 1600s, from that first dude down to Carl Linnaeus to 1700, this guy was the first to formalize the nomenclature, the modern system of naming organisms. He is known as the father of modern taxonomy. Taxonomy, that's the classification system. So now they're trying to classify things in a scientific way. Science is coming on the rise now. He created the class anthropomorphia, which he subdivided into 3 genres. Homo, meaning ape or some monkeys, and Bradipus, meaning sloth. Contrary to some lore, Linnaeus was not the first thinker to connect humans with apes. The 12th century Muslim scholar Rodi made similar links, but his work was often overlooked by Europeans and remains unrecognized today. So now we had the first guy making the different race classes. This guy, he's coming in and making the classification systems and I mean, he's formalizing the language, right? Making scientific categories, right? So we taking it out of just philosophizing and bringing science into existence, right? And he also came in 1735 and had this work called System of Nature. It was published in 1735. This text presented a working classification of matter and living organisms, including humans. Leonidas, following Aristotle's idea that man is animal, decided that the most natural scientific order was a hierarchical one, where organisms were ranked according to their intelligence as he thought God intended. Now, slide 33. So now, not only did he create the formalize the language in a scientific way, he is still ranking things according to Aristotle and Plato. And he's saying God intended to rate things by their intelligence, as God intended. So we go to slide 33, and the next dude we have in order is Emanuel Kant, founder of European racism rhetoric, proud misogynist. He is quoted, "Humanity is in its greatest perfection in the white race. The yellow Indians already have a lesser talent. The Negroes are much lower, and the lowest of all is part of the American peoples." That is Immanuel Kant's quotes. In 1777, in his work, Von der, and I can't read French, I believe this is, but in his work, 1777, Kant expressed the belief that all humans share a common origin. He called upon the ability of humans to interbreed as evidence for this assertion. Additionally, Kant introduced the term degeneration, which he defined as hereditary differences between groups with a shared root. Kant also arrived at the meaning of race from his definition of degeneration. He claimed that races developed when degenerations were preserved over a long period of time. A group could only constitute a race if breeding with a different degeneration resulted in intermediate offspring. Although Kant advocated for a theory of shared human origin, he also contended that there was an innate hierarchy between existing races. So now he's saying that, you know, you got these classes of races, but even between the races, there's a hierarchy. And even in the heavens, there's a hierarchy before him. And then you have this inherent that some people are inherently slaves. So becoming with the more science, but they still have this, he's legitimizing this, he's coming with this racist rhetoric with it now. And 1788, Kant wrote, he maintained in his work that a human's place in nature was determined by the amount of sweat the individual produced, which revealed an innate ability to survive. Sweat emerged from the skin, therefore skin color indicated important distinctions between humans. So this dude came with the racist rhetoric. You know what I'm saying? He came he came and then he started talking about degeneration, right? That people degenerate down, and these degenerations from other people is what brought in race, right? So he's saying that, okay, we got these different classifications of people, and there's a hierarchy among these different classifications. And how we got these different classes of people, of whole people groups, is because they didn't degenerated from somebody else. And whenever you pass down these degenerations, is how a whole class come to exist, or a whole race comes to exist by degenerated what people? What people are these people coming from? We're gonna get to that shortly. So we got slide 34. We're dealing with Blumenbach. Now, all you guys are probably familiar with Blumenbach because he's the one that accredited, but I gave you 2 or 3 people before Blumenbach that helped set this foundation. But Blumenbach was a German physician, naturalist, physiologist, and anthropologist. He is considered a main founder of zoology and anthropology as comparative scientific disciplines. Published originally in 1790, and I don't know how to say the name of his paper, but it's Decas Craniorium in 1790. He is the one that coined the word race, right? And he had the degeneration hypothesis, right? So who was already talking about degeneration before him? Kant, the guy before him in 1777. And right in line, 1790, he comes with the degeneration hypothesis. Let's see what Blumenbach is talking about. He was one of the first to explore the study of the human beings as an aspect of natural history. What does that mean? He was one of the first to study human beings as a natural aspect of history, meaning he was the first one that took God out the equation. You know, before they were saying that, you know, God just plopped humans straight down on the earth. Well, he was saying there was a natural progression that all the organisms were related and we came like that. So he was the first one to come into history and took God out the equation, that God just didn't plop us down and we come straight from God. But he said humans progress from other organisms. So he was the first to explore the natural history. His teachings in comparative anatomy were applied to his teachings in the comparative anatomy were applied to his classification. She claimed was 5: the Caucasian white, the Mongolian yellow, the Malaysian brown, the Ethiopian black, and the American red. Like other monogenicists, Blumenbach held to the degenerative hypothesis of racial origins. Blumenbach claimed that Adam and Eve were white Caucasian inhabitants of Asia, and that other races came by about degeneration from environmental factors such as the sun and poor diet. Thus, he claimed Negro pigmentation arose because of the result of the heat of the tropical sun, while the cold wind caused the tawny color of the Eskimos, and the Chinese were fair-skinned compared to other Asian stocks because they kept protected from environmental factors. He believed the degeneration could be reversed in a proper environmental control, and that all contemporary forms of men could revert to the original Caucasian race. That was Blumenbach. Go to S35, slide 35. So he believed that everybody degenerated down from the white man, Adam and Eve, but in the right environmental factors, you could turn back into being white. That's ridiculous rhetoric. But this is science. Think about this. This is Blumenbach. He's one of the founders of science. This is one of the people who's bringing this these theories into existence, and they keep building on it and building on it and building on it. So now we had Charles Darwin. So where did we just come from? That was what, 1790 to 1882. And then right in line, 1809 to 1882 comes who? Charles Darwin, right? And we all know what his contribution to history and science was, right? The Origin of Species, 1859, and The Descent of Man, 1871, right? His popularized because his theory of natural selection. Let's talk about this, right? Darwin was, after all, a man of his time, class, and society. True, he was committed to monogenic rather than the prevailing polygenic view of human origins, but he still divided humanity into distinct races according to their differences of skin, eye, or hair color. He was also convinced that evolution was progressive. And now that the white races, especially the Europeans, were environmentally more advanced than the black races, uh, he was also convinced that evolution was progressive, which we know now evolution is not progressive. So what does evolution being progressive mean? It means that they was thinking that evolution had a direction, right? That evolution was progressive in the sense that every time you had an evolution, it made something better. But we know that's not the case because you can have something that's beneficial to you and still go extinct. We have a lot of predators and apex predators that have went extinct for different causes or another. So evolution doesn't have no direction, right? But he believed that evolution was progressive and that the white races, especially the Europeans, were evolutionarily more advanced than the black races, thus establishing race differences and a racial hierarchy. In 1881, toward the end of his life, Charles Darwin wrote to a colleague that, quote, more civilized so-called Caucasian races have beaten the Turkish hollow in the struggle for existence. Looking to the world at no very distant day, with an endless number of lower races, would have been eliminated by higher civilized races throughout the world, end quote. This was not just some offhand comment unrelated to Darwin's science. It reflected important elements of his theory of human evolution. Indeed, he articulated this same principle in his scientific study of human evolution, The Descent of Men in 1871, where he claimed, quote, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of men will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races, end quote. Not only racism, but racial extermination was an integral feature of Darwin's theory from the start. So, this man who was so congratulated on his theory of evolution, natural selection, descending from an ape, this is all his racist rhetoric inside of his theory, but he's heralded today as one of the fathers of science. And we look at him as one of the best. So let's talk about
I know you didn't know.
So, two prominent historians specializing in the history of Darwinism, Adrian Desmond and James Moore, mince no words about the racism inherent in Darwin's theory. In their magisterial biography of Darwin, they state, quote, social Darwinism is often taken to be some extraneous and ugly consecration added to the pure Darwinian corpus after the event, tarnishing Darwin's image. But his notebooks make plain that competition, free trade, imperialism, racial extermination, and sexual inequality were written into the equation from the start. Darwinism was always intended to explain human society. So when you hear these quotes like survival of the fittest, all this type of stuff, he's saying the higher classes will exterminate the lower classes, all this stuff, it fits into his theory. That's what he's talking about. The historians saying all this stuff was always meant to explain Darwin's theory of evolution. It's in there. I just named two of his papers, The Descent of Man and The Descent of Man and The Origin of Species. It's all in there. We tend to just look at the stuff that just make us feel good, but we need to read the rhetoric that he also has in there. It might come to a surprise to some that Desmond and Moore include racial extermination in the list, since in the later book, Darwin's Sacred Cause, a hatred of slavery shaped Darwin's views of human evolution. They emphasize Darwin's humanitarian humanitarianism and portray his loathing of slavery as a fundamental influence on his views of human evolution. However, if one actually reads Darwin's Sacred Cause, one may be surprised to find that despite their primary thesis, Desmond and Moore have not at all changed their position on Darwin's embracing racism and even racial extermination. They state, by biologicizing colonial eradication, Darwin was making racial extinction an evolutionary consequence. Races and species perishing was the norm of prehistory. The uncivilized races were following suit, except that Darwin's mechanism here was modern-day massacre. Imperialist expansion was becoming the very motor of human progress. It is very interesting, given the family's emotional anti-slavery views, that Darwin's biologicizing of genocide should appear to be so dispassionate. Natural selection was now predicated on the weaker being extinguished. Individual races had to perish for progress to occur. Thus it was that wherever the European had trod, death seems to pursue the aboriginal. Europeans were the agents of evolution. Pritchard's warning about aboriginal slaughter was intended to alert the nation, but Darwin was already naturalizing the causes and rationalizing the outcome. And that is from the racism of Darwinism. Darwin was writing this theory that we all descend from a common ancestor, but he was wrong in his rankings of humans and instituting hierarchy. The other notable thing about Darwin is the theory of natural selection. Natural selection tries to explain how things evolve over time. So let's summarize this theory of natural selection. Number one, variation. Within any population of organisms, there is variations in traits. These variations can be inherited. That's number one, right? So we're talking about the inheritance of traits. That's in natural selection theory, right? So, but do they know that these traits can be inherited? Because this is science back in the day, right? So this is in the early 1900s, 1859, the early 1800s, late 1800s, right? Number two, overproduction. Most species produce more offspring that can survive to adulthood due to limited resources like food, space, and mates. Number three, competition. Because more offspring are produced than can survive, there is competition for resources. Only some individuals survive to reproduce. Number four, differential survival reproduction. Individuals with traits that give them an advantage in environment, like camouflage, faster speed, are more likely to survive and reproduce. These advantageous traits are more likely to be passed on to the next generation. Number five, accumulation of favorable traits over generations. Advantageous traits become more common in a population, leading to evolutionary change. Through this process, species gradually adapt to their environments. Natural selection is often summarized by the phrase survival of the fittest, where fittest refers to organisms' ability to survive and reproduce. Go to 36. So what is he saying? So he's saying that people that are at the top of the chain have got the best traits and they're going to survive, and it's their duty to exterminate the people that they believe that's below that themselves. But he's trying to put it in scientific language. You got to remember the philosophy that's behind it already, right? He's taking the philosophy that they already laid the groundwork on and putting it in scientific words and putting it in another way, trying to manifest it into reality, right? They saying that people are inherently slaves. They saying that there is a hierarchy amongst people. They saying that there are races and there are races among hierarchy. They saying there's a hierarchy in heaven. And in heaven, we're supposed to be duplicating what's in heaven here on earth. And now we come all the way to modern science and they trying to put that shit in science and acting like it's objective. So did he just figure this shit out? Or was it already an agenda and people are hearing the call and they just building on the person before them? That is my question. Is this objective science? Or is this shit going all in the line? Do you believe this shit?
That boy is good.
Oh, now, slide 37, social engineering. So now we have the philosophy and the science. Now it's about manifesting it. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Now we had Francis Galton, 1883, right? So we then came from Darwin, who was in also the late 1800s, 1859 to 1871. And now we have Francis Galton, 1883, and we're talking about social engineering. So now they got the game and gone with it. They got the science, and now they got to figure out how to institute it in society. 1883, Francis Galton coined the word eugenics. Excuse me. Do you guys know what eugenics is? In 1883, Francis Galton coined the word eugenics. When asked what eugenics was, this was his reply. Eugenics, the study of all agencies under social control which can improve or impair the racial quality of future generations. And I quote, what is eugenics? The study of all agencies under social control which can improve or impair the racial quality of future generations. I find that mighty peculiar that today, when you look up the definition of eugenics in the Oxford Dictionary, it says the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable traits regarded as desirable. Well, it seems they left out a key points of how Galton himself intended it to work. Galton's definition had the method inside the definition, and I quote, the study of all agencies under social control which can improve or impair the racial quality of future generations. The Oxford definition left out the means, all agencies under social control. Sounds like government institutions, and they left out impair racial quality to hinder the types of people considered undesirable. So today, when you read the definition of eugenics, it seems that they have softened it up a bit and make it sound a little more acceptable or reasonable. But the real plain definition by the person who coined the word eugenics is the social engineering of a nation and its institutions to produce not only the physical/racial mindset and mental attributes of the humans you want, but also hinder the type of humans with the mental and racial/physical characteristic that you don't want through social or governmental institutions. We shall deal with the mental aspect later on, but one of the buzzwords in Galton's definition is the word racial, from the word race, which implies supremacy in its original denotation. Today, we know when race and science is mentioned together in the same sentence, it's a red flag. But I will have you know that Galton is Charles Darwin's cousin, and Galton was very familiar with his cousin's work. But the issue with eugenics is who gets to be the measure? That is to say, who gets to choose what traits are desirable and which are not? And could this be used to oppress, stifle, or eradicate whole races, nations of people, nations and peoples of population? And by what ethical or non-ethical means? And what business is it of the government to genetically or socially mold the citizens into whatever way they see fit? What would possess someone to even think in these terms? The defining moment came when Galton read his cousin Charles Darwin's book, The Origin of Species. The Origin of Species changed the direction of his life. It profoundly affected Galton that it, and I quote, this is a quote from Galton, marked an epoch, made a marked epoch in my own mental development, as it did in human thought generally, right? To show how natural selection worked, Darwin often used examples of artificial selection, such as the great number of pigeon varieties that breeders had selected. Such example must have caught Galton's eye as he embarked on his quest to improve the human race. In 1865, he published Hereditary Talent and Character, a two-part paper in Macmillan's magazines. Galton's method in his paper was to establish pedigrees of men of accomplishment. The expectation was that if talent and character were inherited, a father of distinction was likely to have an accomplished son. He showed this to be true. Encouraged by his results, Galton greatly expanded his analysis in hereditary genius in 1869. There he grouped eminent men of profession, judges, military commanders, lord chancellors, and the like. Much to his satisfaction, he found that if fathers were gifted, sons were more likely to be talented than were more than distant relatives. In his view, this establishes the primacy of hereditary. He dismissed the obvious objection that an eminent father was more likely to find a suitable position for his son than the more or less fortunate son. That is, environment might be important too. Darwin elusively praised hereditary genes. He wrote to Galton, quote, I have only read 50 pages of your book, but I must tell myself, else something will go wrong with my inside. I do not think I have ever in all my life read anything more interesting or original, and how well and clearly you put every point. End quote. So, come, are you guys following this? Darwin instituted the theory of natural selection that saying traits passed on, the better traits is how you move forward and take over lesser people. His cousin came in, read his work, and started doing experiments with humans and saying that you can pass down pass down your genes. So it's qualifying. He's qualifying his cousin's work. Darwin read his work and praised him and called this shit original, like he just made it up, like he didn't know what he was doing. He heard the call, right? Galton heard his cousin's call, seen what he was doing, and now they bring it into reality. And the experiment was bogus because he didn't take into consideration that if I'm smart and I'm successful, that I'm able to give my son benefits too, privileges too. I'm able to put him in a good school. But he was saying that because you're inherently smart, you can pass them genes down and your son might be inherently smart. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but he didn't prove it with that experiment he just did, right? But this is science at this point, right? And as a side note, it might be worth mentioning that in December 1910, shortly after his death at the age of 89, Francis Galton finished Can't Say Where, a novel describing his notion of a eugenic utopia. This man wrote a book before he died about a eugenic utopia. What is eugenics about? Creating the type of people that you want through the means of social institutions and through food, right? Exactly what Hitler was trying to do, right? And who did it first? America did it before Hitler was trying to do it, before the Hitler and the Nazis, right?
That's right.
So, in constructing their theories of inheritance, Dalton nor Galton seemed aware of Mendel's definitive 1865 paper, Study of Plants Hybridization. It would not be rediscovered until the 1900s. Slide 38, please. So, I hope this is building up, right? All the way from the 300 BC, we all the way into the 1800s right now, right? And they are trying to bring this perspective, this paradigm into history. You can believe that it's objective science, or you can believe that it's an agenda. It's on you. 1866, Greg Mender, experiments in plant hybridization, discovered the fundamental law of inheritance. Known as the father of genetics, Mendel studied over 10,000 cross-fertilized pea plants. Key differences in their traits could be predicted, depending upon whether he bred small plants with short plants or plants yielding smooth pods with plants yielding wrinkle pods. Eventually, he identified certain governing inheritable traits, which he called dominating and recessive. These could be expressed in mathematical equations or traced in a simple genealogical chart filled with line-linked N's and B's. Among his many conclusions, when pea plants with wrinkled skins were crossed with pea plants yielding smooth skins, the traits for wrinkled skin dominated. In other words, the smooth pea pod skin was corrupted by the wrinkled stock. Wrinkled pea pods ultimately became a powerful image to those who found the human smile compelling. Meaning that they were saying that, that smile come with wrinkles. So you might not want to breed with somebody, make babies with somebody who got that wrinkled smile if you don't want to come into your baby, right? So so when the facts about Mendel's pea pods appeared in America in the 1900s, These influential and eloquent thinkers were able to slap numbers and a few primitive formulas on their class and race hatred, and in so doing created passion that transcended simple bigotry. Now their bigotry became race science. Now Galtonian eugenics was reborn, recast, and redirected into the United States as purely ununiquely American quest. The volume declared that without question, Mendel's law governed all human character. Man is organism and animal, and the laws of improvement of corn and of racehorses hold true for him also. Slide 39. So they were saying that if we can see in plants, inherited traits down in plants, if we can see inherited traits down in corn, if we can see inherited traits down in racehorses, then it applies to humans too. And now we should, we need to do what we need to do with humans, right? We are the high class. We are the top of the pole. We come down from God. We don't like these other people. We got natural slaves. So now, we need to do what we need to do. They saying this stuff without saying it, but you got to understand it in the language of science, right?
Fatality.
So now we with Charles Benedict Davenport, 1911, right? And a lot of this comes from this book called War Against the Weak by Edwin Black. If you get a chance to read that book, read that book. It's an excellent book. It shows how America was into eugenics before the Nazis was into eugenics. And a lot of the stuff that the Nazis got was from America. We think the Nazis did it first, or the Nazis was the only ones that's doing it, but the Nazis got all they game from America. And we don't know how legit eugenics was in America because it don't get talked about. It's not in the history books. But when I tell you eugenics was legit in America, eugenics was legit in America all the way around the board, and
That's
and
right.
you got to understand they was doing it through social institutions, so they was trying to be subtle with it, right? They wasn't going to tell you. Why would they tell you? 1911. The real father of eugenics was, of course, Charles Benedict Davenport. Galton was merely the grandfather. Davenport published his cornerstone volume, Heredity in Relation to Eugenics, which explained the biological basis of the superior family. America's formless eugenics movements found its leader in zoologist Charles Davenport, a man who dominated America's human breeding program for decades, who dominated America's human breeding program for decades, who dominated America's human breeding program for decades. Read that book, War Against the Weak. Davenport, esteemed for his Harvard degrees and his distinguished background, led the wandering faithful out of the wilderness of pure prejudice into the stately corridors of respectability. More than anyone else, it was Davenport who propelled the baseless American eugenics into settled science, wielding a powerful socio-political imperative. So now you don't have to just be prejudiced. I just believe that God intended people to be such a way. Now you got science backing up the rhetoric, right? Davenport returned to America and began constructing his scientific bastion. Impervious to outside interference, the first step would be to establish the so-called eugenics record office to quietly register the genetic background of all Americans, separating the defective strains from the desired lineages. Borrowing nomenclature and charting procedures from the world of animal breeding, these family trees would be called pedigrees. Where would the ERO, the Eugenics Record Office, obtain these family details? They lay hidden. Davenport told his American Breeders Association colleagues, quote, in records of our numerous charity organizations, our 42 institutions of the feeble-minded, our 115 schools of the homes for the deaf and blind, our 350 hospitals for the insane, our 1,200 refugee homes, our 1,300 prisons, our 1,500 hospitals, our 2,500 almshouses, our great insurance companies, and our college gymnasiums have tens of thousands of records of the characters of human bloodlines. These records should be studied, their hereditary data stifled out and properly recorded on cards. The cards The card sent to the Central Bureau of Study, doing exactly what Galton said to do in his definition of eugenics. Use the institutions for social engineering. Boom, that's a bomb. And they make it seem like they just coming up with this stuff. Galton said that the definition of eugenics was using the social institutions, and this dude comes right after him and start doing just that. In order to do what? Slide 40, please. So now we about to talk about Sigmund Freud, who's considered the father of psychology, and then we're going to talk about his nephew Eddie Bernays. We're going to talk about these two together, right? So Sigmund Freud, and if you want to see a great documentary about Sigmund Freud and Eddie Bernays together, and what they did in America with their theories, and how they figured out how to control people with their theories. The documentary, The Century of Self, is a great documentary that shows how these two got together and pretty much dominated the 1900s, right? How to manipulate people, made people rich. They made buttloads of money. And they showed time and time again how to control people through the subconscious, which was through Freud, because Freud was, the father of psychology, but Eddie Bernays was the propaganda king, and they merged these two together. Sigmund Freud in 1865, his theories that helped Bernays control people through the subconscious and social engineering. The theories of Darwin, Freud writes in 1925 autobiography, strongly attracted me. For they held out the hopes of an extraordinary advance in understanding the world. Freud and Eddie Bernays' work proved that people can be manipulated through the subconscious and use institutions to do so through propaganda, aka public relations. Freud was Bernays' uncle, right? And Eddie Bernays in 1891 came out with his book Propaganda, and he was the one that changed propaganda to public relations, so it wasn't had no negative tone to it. So I'm going to conclude the presentation to right there, and I just want y'all to see how that all flows in line, and how essentially history is framed one way, but I'm just trying to show you in order, in a chronological order, how all these guys would just heard the call of the previous guy and understood what the agenda was without being explicit, right? And now you have, even today, people are still pushing this agenda, but it's not made for us to see it. You know what I'm saying? So I know that was long and drawn out, and there was a lot of readership, but I hope you guys enjoyed it and really kind of understood what I was trying to get at. You know? So
That was fire.
I don't
That
know if
boy's
Smash gonna
good.
let me. I
I
don't know if
hear you.
Smash
That was
gonna let me
fire.
take.
Let you do what?
What up? Can we take some questions?
I mean, we could if they put them up in the chat real quick, but yeah, we can't. My wife is like, Harriet, she's been trying to get me for the last 30 minutes. I've been like, he almost done.
All right.
And so,
All right, bet.
yeah, I hate that it's
All right.
under those situations. But we going to do an after party on this presentation when we can, and see what they got to say about it. That was wonderful and astute, and it looked really nice, and there was a lot of good information in there. We're gonna leave that up, but I do gotta get out on this Friday and take care of this family business. So I want to thank you, Due Diligence, for taking your time to show people what we've been talking about and what we wrapped up in and what it's all about. You feel me?
Appreciate it, man. I just hope people really followed it, and I hope people paid attention. And maybe sometime I can come on another show and do it again, and just have a live conversation, like do it over, where people can come in and we can just really chop it up on it, and I can give some of my
Well,
views, and maybe people can give me some feedback.
if when I stream in the morning, we're gonna be talking about this. We'll let people watch it. Everybody ain't here because Reggie's streaming live right now too. So that's probably another problem. So people will catch up, get up to speed on the presentation, and then we'll do a recap in the morning.
Bet.
Word up. Thank you. I'm about to
people.
close this down and then close down the show. Thank y'all for watching, and thank you, Due Diligence, again. Hey, what's your Cash App, dude?
Don't worry about it. We'll get at it next time. We'll get at it next time. I don't even know it off the top of my head. I have to look, so it's all good.
All right, it's all good. That's what's up. Peace,
boy is
peace,
good.
peace, peace. All right. Yeah. Wonderful presentation by Due Diligence. About to get out here and take care of this family. See y'all in the morning. We're going to talk about it. Get your questions together. Peace.